Hello and welcome to all the alumni, students, faculty, and friends of the Faculty of Math who are joining us today for our second Waterloo Women's Impact Network webinar. It's wonderful that even in the midst of all these difficult and extraordinary times, the Waterloo Math family and faculty can still find ways to connect, engage, and share, especially to discuss two of my personal favorite topics, women in STEM and leadership. My name is Sophie Jansen Spitman. I'm a current student in the Math and Business double degree program at Waterloo. I'm a member of the Women in Math undergraduate committee and a current WIN student member. I participated in Waterloo's Think About Math when I was in grade 10, and that program is really what opened the door to math for me. Now I'm happy that to support and promote mathematics to other STEM fields to women and other underrepresented people in the field. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers today. We have our panelists, the wonderful Joanne McKinley, who will be our main speaker. Joanne is the Director of Software Development at Google. She's co-founded the Google Waterloo office in 2005 as one of the first developers of mobile Gmail. And Joanne is passionate about championing and developing female leaders in technology. Joanne holds a BMath and MMath in computer science from the University of Waterloo. Our moderator today is the lovely Sandra Banks. Sandra joined the University of Waterloo as Vice President of University Relations in April 2015, bringing with her extensive experience across the public, private, and non-for-profit sectors. At Waterloo, Sandra leads the university's broad range of marketing, communications, government relations, and community relations initiatives. In this role, Sandra is committed to building strong internal and external relationships and a positive public profile that supports the vision in Waterloo's strategic plan to connect imagination with impact for a better world. She's a mom of 2 high schoolers, and Sandra and her family enjoy everything Waterloo region has to offer. Thanks for participating, and take it away, Sandra.
That was an excellent start to our program this afternoon. I'm very excited to be joining you all here on the Waterloo Women's Impact Network conversation today with Joanne McKinley. I've always been inspired and in awe of the women that I've met across my career and across my life, particularly those like Joanne in leadership positions who are reaching new heights, setting new standards, and breaking barriers across industries and across roles. Women in leadership, as we know, have made some amazing strides over the past few years, but we also know there's clearly a lot more work for all of us to keep doing. And it's really through these kinds of conversations and support from programs like Waterloo Women's Impact Network that we can continue to drive positive results and positive change. Today, in our conversation with Joanne, we're going to cover a wide range of topics, including how we can overcome personal resistance to taking on new leadership roles, why it's important to be intentional or deliberate in your own career growth planning, addressing the fear of missing out, and how to make your work and home life more sustainable. So you're not just surviving, but thriving. I think, unfortunately, for a lot of us, that sounds very familiar. So we've arrived now. We can start the conversation. Joanne, how are you doing today? How's your day going so far?
I'm doing well. It's great. It was a nice weather today. I walked my kids to school and back, and I've been doing a little bit of work this morning. But I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. I think what an unusual time where I can do, excuse me, and do these 3 things all in one morning. You know, and it's I'm just really thrilled to be here today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. It's great to be here with you. Joanne and I have had a chance to have a few discussions. And we thought we might kick off on the topic of what a milestone year looks like. I think this has been a very different kind of year for so many people, but for you, Joanne, you've been able to mark some very significant milestones. Tell us a bit about what's been going on for you in the last year.
Thank you, Sandra. That is exactly what has been going on for me. I think I'm going to look back on 2020, 2021 as, possibly a career highlight for me. And yeah, it's so crazy to even be able to say those words, especially, I have to acknowledge this is not the case for everyone. A lot of us are struggling, personal lives. It's been challenging isn't even the word enough to describe what I'm thinking, but this is it's been hard for a lot of people, but for me, I'm fortunate and feel a huge amount of gratitude that it has been a banner year for me professionally. And I'll just tell you a couple of the things that have happened. One of them was COVID related. One of them was not. One was, just before lockdown in March 2020, so maybe about January or so, that's when I got the call on the phone that, from the chair of the J.W. Graham Medal in Computing and Innovation. And I'm just, out of the blue, I had no heads up on this at all. I didn't even know I was nominated. I thought, oh, they just want a reference or something. So, I get this phone call, and the person, Candace, on the other end is telling me that I've actually won for 2020, which completely blew my mind. I mean, in my mind, only legends win this award, not me, legends. So I'm sitting there and crying on the phone. It was just something that I could have never anticipated would happen to me. And it took me a while to kind of get used to this, the imposter syndrome, which I know, a lot of people, is a conversation for another day. But I mean, the imposter, the little person on my shoulder, are you sure? And it took me a while to come to grips with this, and to think that maybe me, some of my accomplishments can be worthy of recognition. So that was how I started off the year. As all of there was a huge transition in March where all of our worlds were shifted upside down. It was also a difficult time professionally at work, helping my teams move through that time of transition as well. But I mean, it also goes to show you that you can do hard things. So it's like my daughter's Claire's kindergarten teacher says, right? In kindergarten, you can do hard things. And, getting through that and out the other side and helping my teams through that did actually build a lot of confidence for me. In the summer, a lot of things happened to me at work, but you can just see like a theme of like my confidence was building through the year. I know we're going to talk about it later today, but I had found a way to kind of make my role in my life sustainable. And in long story short, I went for promotion to director of software development at Google Waterloo. So just so that people know here, there are no other women directors. There's 10 directors. None of them are women, and none of them have promoted internally. And also supported by, I've been on I would say, multi-year journey of self-discovery. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about this as well, but basically all the stars aligned in the summer, and I put in a promotion bid and it was successful. So, I mean, looking back on this, being promoted to director, a huge work milestone, and winning this medal is just unprecedented. I can't imagine two things that I could never have imagined happening in 1 year at the same time as this, world upheaval that's happening all at the same time.
Well, that's tremendous. I think you have to accept the fact that you are legend. What an amazing story over the last 12 months. And thanks for sharing that with us. I think we're all looking for those stories of goodness and light and the right things happening. And it sounds for you that has happened. But I think you also struck a chord when you started, Joanne, simply by acknowledging that we've all kind of had our highs and lows this year. It has been a roller coaster, as fun and as terrifying as that may have been. But congratulations on your past year. How are you seeing things play forward in 2021? Are you still experiencing some of those highs or other milestones emerging in your career?
Well, yes. So, I guess the theme has changed, and nothing ever stays the same. I mean, as a result of getting promoted to director, one of the things that has happened, even for me in the past month, is that I have been offered a larger role. So I've been working through this in the past month. I used to formerly manage a team of about 55 software developers, and now in the past month up to 135 across a variety of teams, workspace across Google, Gmail, chat, and Currents. So, I mean, for me, it's hard to say if this opportunity would have happened or not. It was certainly facilitated by my promotion and just filling the needs that are there at the time when they're needed. So personally, I would kind of like it to slow down a little bit. I like to, feel like I could kind of settle. But that I think that, just looking back on it's like the experience that a lot of us have when we're going into a new job, right? It's a lot of change and very intimidating for the first while, and you have to work through it and come to grips with it and figure out what the new normal is and the new routine. So that is what I've been going through in the last month, and I definitely expect to continue for the rest of 2021.
Well, you're coping very well. Let's just change gears ever so slightly and talk a little bit about just what we've all been experiencing, the reality of a global pandemic in our work and home life. What changes have you personally experienced over the past 12 months owing to COVID-19? Both in your work and home life. What have you observed has either worked or hasn't worked so well?
Well, I think in terms of home, I mean, my story probably isn't that dissimilar. I have then a lot of women out there. I have these three children, 13, 10, and 6. And then, of course, they're at home, helping them with their various studies throughout the year. So that part, of my story is similar to what a lot of people are going through. I have a very supportive spouse and who takes on at least 50% of the childcare house, duties. We split that up fairly evenly. That's something I know that I'm grateful for. That certainly helps support me and my family, and also allows me to achieve at work as well. So that's ups and downs there. I mean, is every day easy? Absolutely not. Sometimes I've had to take extra time off to support my family, and I'm lucky to be in a position where I can do that. I have some flexibility in my hours and how I do my job, which is great. But on the other hand, I've experienced things that I wouldn't have experienced otherwise. Helping my 6-year-old son, learn. I'm a lot more hands-on. Let's just say I'm a lot more hands-on in that than I would be otherwise. And similar with a bunch of other experiences I've been having with my family. But in terms of the workplace, I mean, one of the things that immediately happened in March of last year that I didn't even know that this was a problem or a burden that I was carrying, it was travel guilt. Especially I work for a company, from Waterloo that's headquartered in California, of course. So the habit, I can only say habit, the habit that we had was a lot of work travel to go back and maintain those work relationships. But this was always a problem for me in that I didn't like traveling. I was not willing to travel as much as a lot of my colleagues, especially my male director colleagues. It was so I had held guilt all the time. Like if I wasn't traveling, I was letting my team down at work. And if I was traveling, then I was letting down my family at home and felt like the wheels were coming off. So it's impossible to be in two places at one time. So in March 2020, that guilt immediately went away, which it was a huge relief. And I didn't even know that I had this going on. And it certainly has been making me think a lot about that. Like, why do I accept these? Why did I do that to myself? Why was I accepting this, holding myself to these standards or accepting this guilt on myself? And I'm wondering what else is going on in other areas of my life where I might be doing the same thing. I don't. So that was some of the learnings that I've had from COVID-19. I enjoyed not commuting. I mean, I can immediately take that time back and devote it to things that are more important. I mean, it's one of my personal philosophies. You have to take care of yourself first, then your family, and then your job. And just even having that time of the day back allowed me to focus on those 3 priorities rather than commuting. I don't even like driving that much anyways. I didn't mind.
We hear you, Joanne. I think that's going to benefit I think many of our audience today may have experienced as well. I wonder if we could talk just a little bit about some of the, the unexpected benefits, maybe some of the ways that there's been a leveling of the playing field. I think of one experience where I see a lot more of my colleagues more often, albeit for a shorter period of time. I think for some of us, who are looking to develop teams, there may be an opportunity to encourage that exposure through not just virtual occasions as we have in the past 12 months, where it's maybe it's easier to raise your hand on Zoom or in Teams than it is in the room. Maybe it's easier to keep your camera on than turn it off and be present. I think there are some lessons or maybe some leveling of the exposure or the playing field for different members on our teams. But I'm just wondering, is there anything from the COVID-19 experience that you want to carry forward in your work or even in your life that has been a good experience?
First of all, I love those examples that you gave there. I mean, those are some great examples there. And what was I going to say? Yeah, so like certainly, being a lot more inclusive of people working in different locations and different times is something I think that we can more easily do going forward. I think what you said, like I can see your face better now, through my screen than if we were, maybe you and I, but then maybe not everyone would be able to see it, just like the layout of meetings. But I guess another thing, in addition to what you were just saying, that is interesting is it puts people on a level playing field in terms of access to other people. I was talking about traveling before, like I don't have to travel to have access to the people that I need to have access to in order to influence and do my job. So and also it got them to get used to not having like that immediate, like, oh, I'm just sitting right next to each other and just have that conversation. So I'm sure it was a lot harder on them than it was for me, but it certainly brings all of these issues more to the forefront. So it can only be good for inclusion. And so that's what I definitely think will play forward. It is already making a difference in the tools that we use to communicate already. Like I come from Google Workspace, but we've certainly been able to take a lot of lessons that we've learned in the past year to improve our communication tools. So those things will definitely will stay over even after COVID is over.
Absolutely, and we should thank you for making so many of those Google tools available to us to facilitate our work or collaboration. No, they're amazing. Maybe we can I know you mentioned, how you evolved and developed your preparedness to take on not just one, but really two leadership changes in a relatively short period of time. How have mentors or coaches helped you along the way? Particularly with getting in the right frame of mind to prepare yourself to take on new responsibility.
It's been absolutely pivotal. Like you were just saying, like I was my own worst enemy. I was literally the one holding myself back for a very long time, and I didn't even know this. I know a lot of people go through similar journeys, but I encourage everyone out there today to think about what of this applies to myself as well, because the problem is, we go to work, we go to school every day, and you don't spend the time, thinking about these things, and it doesn't come up very, very regularly. So any opportunities that you have to think about some of these things at a meta level is only beneficial. So one of the things that I was fortunate to have access to was an executive coach. I think it was maybe in 2019, and she helped me out tremendously. She helped me check a bunch of those assumptions that I was holding. They were so fundamental to my beliefs. I didn't know that I was holding these assumptions. So she helped me sort of unpack some of this stuff. So one of the things that I was scared of when I was pre-director role was the idea of director. I was so scared of what it would mean to become a director is I couldn't even read the job description. I literally could not open up the internal page on Google corporate network and read what the requirements of the director position would be. And, why was I scared? I mean, I had to work to figure that out. And basically it was the huge part of the reason was because I didn't have any role models that I could visualize myself doing the role like that. Like I could actively see a bunch of people doing the role that I had no interest in doing that role. Like, men, obviously one there. I thought a bunch of these people looked tired, maybe not taking personal care of their own personal health. They weren't prioritizing their personal health in some cases. We already talked about on the plane, 1 week a month on the plane. And it's like, I'm not willing to do any of that. So for the longest time, I thought being a director isn't for me. There's just no way I would even consider doing that, because that's what that when I see that behavior being role modeled, what I was assuming was that was a requirement for the position. And this coach, she sat me down and said, does any of that appear in the job ladder? Like, when you go to that site, does it actually say that any of this is a requirement? And it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. And it's like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? Right. So it is all tied up into role modelship as well. Like that moment there, I realized that, okay, I'm not going to have the perfect role model out there that looks like me or acts like me, but over time, a year or two, it just became more and more important for me to be that role model. Obviously I'm gender minority, but I'm a minority in other ways as well. I haven't talked about it yet today, but I actually only work 80% time. I work 32-hour work weeks. I have done so ever since I became a mother. So maintaining a strict sort of balance and separation between work and home is another way that it's important to be a role model or a representative. It benefits not just women, but also men as well.
Tell us more about that. That's a wonderful feat, and setting a new standard for you and for others. How did you go about negotiating that? What was how did you achieve that?
I kind of fell into it a little bit. I basically was on maternity leave with my first child, and I saw mention of another woman doing this. And at this time I was a software engineer, so it was a different position than I was in now. And I just came back and, well, like I was saying before, you can't be in two places at once. And, I couldn't bear the idea of leaving my child, but I couldn't bear the idea of not doing my job. So I tried to kind of go 50-50 almost on this. And then I had a very supportive, my entire career, I've been very lucky to have a strong set of male allies who support me and help me achieve my goals. And my manager and my tech lead at the time were like, no problem, just, go ahead and do it. And it was literally just as easy as that. It was a matter of asking, and then also, proving that you can do it as well. But, I've changed roles a number of times, including becoming a leader of increasingly larger teams. And it's never been an issue. At a super simplified level, the way I tell people come to me is like, how does this even work? How can you even possibly do that? I can barely do my job in 5 days. How do you possibly do it in 4? And the answer to that is, everyone who works a 5-day job already has to prioritize their time. Like you can't probably feel like you can't do your job in 5 days either. Well, you just have to become more intentional about strict prioritization to get it to down to 4. And I'm just saying that these are skills that you already exercise every day in your own job. You just have to do it a bit more. And I actually think it's about as simple as that. I think it's about as simple as that.
Well, you are forging a new path, and we'll be watching, and good luck with all that you're doing and all the standards that you're setting for women and others in the workforce. Now, you mentioned having a coach, having allies, having had that kind of support. Can you now define, as you look forward, how you can play that role for others in your organization or on your team, either as a mentor or coach or ally?
Oh, definitely. I try to do all of these things. I have, more requests for mentees than I have time for. So I unfortunately I have to turn down some requests, which is a little bit unfortunate, but so what I do with my mentorship time is I spend it on women and underrepresented gender minorities, or people who want to work flexible work schedules. So I think I'm in a unique position to help these people. There are lots of men who can mentor the men. I hope I didn't offend anybody by saying that, but so I have to be strict on the types of roles that I take on that way. I certainly spend a lot of time trying to get my story out. I did one internally at Google not too long ago. I'm happy to, that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to be here today. I mean, trying to share my story a little bit. I mean, if I can help one person, I mean, then or help one person think of things a little bit differently than before, then this is an easy way to do it. I just go to something like this and talk about, be vulnerable. Also in team meetings with my teams of various sizes, being vulnerable and modeling a bunch of the behaviors that I want to see and help other people with are some of the ways that I try to help.
That's excellent. Well, as a leader, it's important to be self-aware, be intentional, and I think you're demonstrating all of that. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability. I think we indicated early on that we talk about how to not just survive, but thrive. Given the changes and milestones over the last year, how are you right now, thinking about not coping strategies, but how, the way forward? How can you manage your mindset for the long term? Because we've been so short-term focused in the last 12 months, just getting through the day, getting through the crisis or the project. What's your view of coping over the longer term now with all this experience behind you?
Coping over the longer term, I guess, I've touched on this somewhat already. I think gratitude is a huge tool that I personally have found useful. I know a lot of people do as well in coping with the very most difficult times. What is actually going well? Like, what's going well? What are some things I can be grateful for? And then you can start thinking, framing it. Do I increase these? What are some actions that I can take? Having an attitude of, I can enact change to the extent, or what are the things that I am in charge of, or I can have control over, as opposed to feeling like a victim of circumstances as much. I think is a good way to help change one's mindset into something positive. I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. Putting on your own oxygen mask first is critical. If you're not taking care of yourself, and your tanks are going down, then it's going to show up in some other area of your life. So it's not selfish. It's actually giving. It's prioritizing yourself. Paradoxically, is giving to other people, because the healthier that you are, you can show up for your family, also for your role in your teams at work. And if I'm not saying there won't be ups and downs. I definitely have experienced a time of stress in the past work, as I've basically taken on a new job. But I'm always having my eye on that. How do I get into a more sustainable state and doing the things that I can do to get there? Because for me, and I think this seems somewhat, it seems reasonable. I don't want to accept that every day or every year is this isn't one that I want to be living. And if you don't start today, then when are you going to start? Don't wait. Like the time to make change is today. And if it's not, or give yourself, a shorter time span. Just don't make it long into the future. I just started a new job, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll give myself a couple of weeks on that one. But you don't have to accept the status quo for this is what has to be happening. Make sure you feel that that empowerment to shape your life into what you need it to be.
I think I'm sure everybody in the audience is thinking about what each of you or them is going to take forward out of this to become a better employee, leader, partner, friend, colleague. But I think one of the things that seems self-evident, and maybe that's why we miss it, is that sometimes celebrating the very simple victories, the ones we should never take for granted, which is getting through the hour, getting through the day, in a period now where there's such compression in our work days. There's more meetings, there's shorter times, the deadlines seem to creep up earlier all the time. And somehow many of us keep meeting them. And so we are successful in this time. I think we can also push back as we come out of this to say we need to adjust for how we keep moving forward and progressing in the future. But some days it's as simple as I just need to get up and stretch and touch my toes, and that is going to make me turn me into a whole better person for the next hour. So it's sometimes just recognizing the very simple changes or the very simple additions. And I know taking care of yourself, Joanne, thanks for saying that. I think most of us feel guilt about that and regret about not looking after others better or earlier. So relieving a little pressure on that, I think is also great.
Completely agree with everything you said. I mean, I remember that, the hardest times, March, April of last year, when we're all, trying to adjust with this changed world. I would do that at the dinner table, make my family describe one thing that they're grateful for, or it's something that went well for their day at a time when it seemed very foreign. After a while, I think that I kind of drove them a little crazy with that, but I still do that for myself. And I do this for my teams at work, my work as well.
Yeah. Now, I think when we talked earlier, there was all kinds of areas of hope and optimism that we should also address, just in terms of how we look at the future, as well as just, what some of the silver linings or benefits are. And maybe one of them, which seems maybe self-evident as well, maybe you could just talk about what are some of the benefits of being a woman in a traditional or male-dominated environment? Is there anything that's occurred to you, just taking advantage of everything that you are?
Yes, and actually one of them came from the time when I was a student. I think it's been easier for me to be considered for various roles by virtue of the fact that I stood out. By being a minority, I think it's possible to turn that to your advantage, to make you and your story more memorable in a sea of people who look, act, do very, very similarly. So, I mean, now we didn't have language around diversity, 20 years ago when I was doing this, but we certainly have that now. And I definitely encourage everyone to look for the ways to look for your unique strengths and advantages to help you stand out and to help you further your own career goals. I definitely, as I got older and more confident, I am more able to speak up for the changes that I want to see after. But you don't have. I wish I hadn't waited so long either. I mean, even in your own environment, being confident in asking for the things that you want and need is an important thing to pave, not just for yourself as a woman, but just also to the balance that you're looking for, and also to make the environment better for everyone, not just women that are around you or that might follow in your footsteps.
Absolutely. Joanne, I was reflecting on this question of kind of hope and optimism and the role that all of us as leaders can play. And when I say leaders, I think it's a very broad swath of our work colleagues. We can all be leaders. Just think about where change and where the biggest solutions in the last year have come from. Change has come from social activists, making it very clear what society needs to do to change. Change and solutions has come from scientists to solve the pandemic crisis. Leaders have been helpful in working very hard to navigate our way through this, but it has been unconventional leaders that are actually having a really great impact in the last 12 months. And so maybe that's a vote of confidence and a note of inspiration for everyone in our audience, that we are all leaders and can influence change and positive impacts going forward. For me, that's, I think, what I'm most optimistic about. And it's so heartening to hear how you describe how you will play that leadership role as well in your organization, but even more broadly than that.
Just, add one simple example onto that anybody can do now is if you're booked into a meeting at work that doesn't work for you, doesn't work for your time, whether is it after hours or like if someone isn't respecting your wishes, you don't have to put up with that. Like ask for a change there, and just start like really simple, like that. They'll probably go with it. But I think putting up with things like this over the long term, this is what can kind of get you into a mindset of, not feeling as empowered. So, just starting really small with a simple thing like that is a way that anybody can be a leader at any one time. And you know what, if you're the one that speaks up and asks for this, politely and respectfully, there might be other people as well who weren't saying anything, but then you've made it better for everyone.
All right. Now, Joanne, I see a couple of questions coming through, so maybe I'll just work through two of them. The first one that we'll go to actually relates just to our recent discussion about role models. Seeing role models is important. In what ways can or should women leaders represent themselves as role models? Any suggestions for our audience on that?
Okay, that's a tough one. I mean, I've provided a lot of examples already, but I think following through with what we've been saying, being who you are is a hugely important one. And I will just be honest about people with people. I will be transparent, tell people about my own situation. Being vulnerable, I think, is a critical trait. Not just as a female leader, but all genders as well. So, I mean, there's a lot here that can apply to both males and females that, I'm not going to be able to do, justice to in a really short time, but, I definitely try to be visible. I actually think it's easier. And you know what? I actually think it's a little bit easier during COVID work from home here as well. Like I can send out quick messages that reach a lot of people. I'm not always a huge fan of public speaking, but in many ways, this is crazy, but I actually find it easier to do something like this, where I'm just talking to Sandra, one-on-one here. I gave a talk at work to, hundreds of people, but I'm just at home in my comfortable environment. Anyway, so like, those are some examples of, I think, advantages. Just tying it back to the conversation that we were having before, but I've also just been trying to use this as an opportunity to be a more visible leader and to put my story out there.
I would just add, it's kind of, if you're trying to be the ultimate or consummate role model for your peers or your colleagues, it's a tall order. I've often thought that, try one thing at a time. If you are particularly strong at listening or consensus building or project management, go with one strength and role model that for others, or help others adapt one, leadership attribute at a time, because it's a tall order to think that you're going to role model for, an individual or entire organization. So it's possible to start, with one or two opportunity areas and try to influence and support others in those areas. I see two more questions, and then I know we are creeping towards our time. But someone's just looking for practical suggestions to empower others to design leadership positions to work better for your life. And that's a big question. And maybe, Joanne, you did talk about that in terms of how you structured or negotiated a work-life balance and how you maintained that. I'm not sure if these are linked, but I see there's another question on that. So let's actually leapfrog and then come back to other ideas. But what's the advice on how you maintain that discipline of the balance that you have achieved so far?
Another great question. I have to say that this is not always easy. I definitely don't want people to, the flip side of being a role model, I don't want people to also think that I always find, I live a charmed life and always find things easy, because that is definitely not the case. But, maintaining that balance is something that is always a work in progress for me. And I am actively working on, these weeks and these months. I do find it harder at home because you don't have that commute ritual. and you're working in the environment where you are at home as well. So I don't think I'm as good at, like, I do have a hard time detaching at the end of the day after my work. So this is something that I'm personally working on to try to figure this out. And I'm still actively learning about some of the digital well-being tools that are on my phone to help me, at least turn off the emails and the pings at the end of the day. And I mean, it's embarrassing to admit that I didn't do this before, but better late than never. So, this is always a work in progress for me. But I think it's important to also be flexible as well. I think it's just the reality of the situation that, at least in my job, the demands come and ebb and flow throughout the year. And I will be more flexible. Like for us, we just come off a couple of weeks that are very busy. So I'll be working a few extra hours then, but then other times of the year, I really have no qualms. I'll leave early to take care of my kids, or when we used to take them to in-person lessons, do that kind of a thing. So having some flexibility there. I do try to not have my people, I try to structure my role so that I'm not a bottleneck, or people aren't if I'm not there, people kind of know what to do. So I think that's another important sort of tool in making sure that you can try to keep that balance. So those are a few ideas there, but I will say I don't have it completely solved.
Well, you're a terrific role model in terms of designing how you can be successful as a leader. I think that's very inspiring. I see the question is about other practical suggestions. I might just offer two, if I can. One is when you show up in the morning, do you know exactly what are the 2 or 3 things that are the most important things to do? Because there's no end of competition for your time. And so clearly knowing those in your own mind. And then I think the other thing is inviting people to respect your time. And it's not freely available, and it's not always available. It really does have to get metered out to support you in accomplishing what's important to you. So I think, Joanne, that we're very close to wrapping up. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add by way of call to action or thanks to the community, but you've just been a tremendous guest and spokesperson today. And it's been a really great conversation. Anything you want to finish up on?
Be confident in yourself and your own abilities, your own abilities to enact the change that you want to see. And if you just keep doing this, we talked about role models a lot, but even in doing that, you are a role model and help you also striving for some of your own personal goals that you might have around, whether it be advancement, whether it be balance, whether it be sustainability, looking for different opportunities. Don't be afraid to ask for the things that you need, and don't accept just because challenge your assumptions. Just because something has been this way for a long time, it doesn't mean that it can't be changed. And you are the one to help make it change for the better.
That's a very inspiring call to action and a great way for us to wrap up. I'd really like to thank you, Joanne. I think we've all benefited from your candor, your wisdom. Obviously, you're very creative in how you approach your work, and your thoughtfulness. Really appreciate the discussion today. Thank you to Sophie for hosting the Math Digital community. It was wonderful to have you with us today. So thanks very much. It's been a tremendous opportunity. I think I can speak on behalf of Joanne to join you today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of this Wednesday.